The Sanctum Sanctorum trembled as Dr. Stephen Strange traced sigils of containment through the air, each gesture leaving trails of golden light that hardened into mystical barriers. The dimensional rift before him pulsed with sickly green energy, something from beyond the dark dimension, beyond even the furthest reaches he'd mapped. Wong shouted warnings from across the room, but Strange could barely hear him over the screaming of torn reality. "Almost. Got it," Strange muttered, weaving the final seal. The rift convulsed. Then it inverted. Strange felt the pull instantly, not on his body, but on the fundamental strings of his existence. The eye of Agamotto grew cold against his chest. His feet left the ground as the rift became a vortex, and his carefully constructed seals shattered like glass. Wong's hand missed his by inches. Then Stephen Strange fell through the space between spaces. Colors that had no names streaked past him. He tumbled through what felt like infinite doorways, each one showing a different reality. But these weren't the branching timelines he knew. These were older, more fundamental. He saw wars fought with laser swords, ships shaped like triangles blotting out suns, and a pervasive energy that wasn't magic but felt disturbingly similar. The fall ended abruptly. Strange crashed onto cold stone, his cloak of levitation snapping tight around him as it absorbed the impact. He lay there for a moment, taking inventory. Everything hurt, but nothing was broken. The Sanctum's protection spells had held just enough. He pushed himself to his knees and looked around. He was in a temple. Ancient by any measure, the stone beneath his hands was worn smooth by millennia of footsteps. Massive pillars rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Strange recognized the architectural language. Places of worship shared certain geometries across dimensions. But the symbols carved into the walls were completely unfamiliar. Not Sanskrit, not celestial script, nothing from any magical tradition he'd studied. Strange stood, his red cloak settling around his shoulders. The air tasted of salt. He was near an ocean. He could hear waves crashing somewhere beyond the temple walls, but more than that, he felt something in the air itself, an energy field that penetrated everything, connected everything. It wasn't the mystical currents he was used to reading. This was something else entirely. He raised his hands and attempted a simple portal. The sling ring on his fingers sparked, sputtered, and died. Strange frowned. He tried again, this time drawing more deeply on his training. Golden sparks appeared, began to form a circle, then collapsed. "That's problematic," Strange said to the empty temple. A sound echoed from deeper within. Footsteps on stone. Multiple sets. Strange's hands came up defensively, energy crackling between his fingers. The mystic art still worked, even if his portals didn't. That was something. 3 figures emerged from the shadows. The first was a young woman, maybe mid-20s, with her hair pulled back in a practical triple bun style. She wore desert wrappings and carried a staff that looked cobbled together from scrap metal. Behind her came 2 men, one dark-skinned in what appeared to be military gear, the other with dark curly hair and a holstered weapon of some kind. The woman stopped when she saw him, her eyes widening. The staff fell from suddenly nerveless fingers and clattered on the stone. "You're real," she whispered. "You're actually real." Strange lowered his hands slightly, more confused than threatened. "I assure you I'm quite real, though I'm not sure where here is. This temple." "Ah, To," the woman said, still staring at him like he was a ghost. "The first Jedi temple. Master Luke told me about you. He said you appeared to him once, years ago, in a vision. A sorcerer from beyond the stars who could walk between worlds." Strange felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean air. "I've never been here before. I've never even heard of Achtu." The woman took a step closer. And Strange noticed her eyes were bright with something between hope and desperation. "Then you're from before or after?" Time doesn't work right in the world between worlds." She reached out slowly, as if to confirm he was solid. "My name is Rey, and I think you might be the answer we've been looking for." Strange looked at the young woman, at her companions, at this ancient temple on an unknown world. The energy field he felt. Could it be what they called the Force? And what was this world between worlds she mentioned? He'd come looking for a dimensional rift. He had a feeling he'd found something far more dangerous. "Dr. Stephen Strange," he said finally. "And I think we need to talk about exactly what kind of answer you're looking for." Rey led them to what she called the ancient text chamber, a hollow carved into the stone where half-burned books rested on shelves that had somehow survived millennia. Her companions, Finn and Poe, hung back by the entrance, clearly uncertain about this strange robed figure who'd appeared in their most sacred place. Strange examined the books with professional interest. They reminded him of the texts in Kamartaj, though the language was completely foreign. Still, he recognized the way knowledge had been preserved here, the same reverence, the same sense that what these pages contained was dangerous. "You said someone named Luke told you about me," Strange said, running his fingers along a spine without quite touching it. "But I've never met anyone by that name." Rey sat cross-legged on the stone floor, her posture unconsciously mirroring meditation poses Strange knew well. Master Luke Skywalker. He was the last Jedi, until me. Before he became one with the Force, he told me about a vision he'd had. A man in red and blue who could open doorways through space, who wielded power that wasn't the Force, but something similar. The Force. Strange tested the word. "That's what I'm feeling in the air. It's not magic, but it's close." "What's the difference?" Finn asked from the doorway. Strange considered how to explain multiversal mysticism to someone who'd apparently never heard of it. Magic draws on dimensional energies, specific sources of power that exist outside normal reality. What I'm feeling here is more omnipresent, like it's part of the fabric of this universe itself. Rey leaned forward, fascinated. "That's exactly what the Force is. It binds the galaxy together, connects all living things. But you're saying you use something else. Multiple somethings." Strange gestured, and golden geometric patterns appeared in the air between them. Rey gasped. Finn's hand went to his weapon. "The mystic arts allow me to manipulate reality directly. Time, space, matter, energy, all can be shaped with sufficient knowledge and discipline. Can you teach me?" The words burst from Rey before she could stop them. "The Jedi texts, they're incomplete. So much knowledge was lost when the Empire hunted down the Jedi. And what remains is, it's not enough. The First Order is out there, growing stronger, and I'm supposed to rebuild the Jedi Order with fragments and faith." Strange saw the desperation in her eyes and recognized it. He'd worn that same expression once, when his hands had been ruined and he'd sought any cure, any hope. "Rey, I don't even know where I am. What galaxy is this? What reality?" "Galaxy," Poe spoke up. "You're in the galaxy, the only one. Unless you're talking about other galaxies, but those are too far away to reach even with hyperspace." Strange felt the floor drop out from under him metaphorically. Not another dimension, another universe entirely, possibly another multiverse altogether. The implications were staggering. "I need to get back," Strange said, more to himself than to them. "Wong will be looking for me. The Sanctum's defenses." He stopped, realizing these words meant nothing to them. "I have responsibilities, people depending on me." "So do we," Rey said quietly. "The Resistance is barely holding together. Kylo Ren and the First Order control most of the major systems. We're running out of allies, out of time, out of hope." She stood, moving closer to him. You said you can manipulate time and space. The world between worlds. It's a pathway through time itself, hidden in the Force. If we could access it, if we could change even one thing about the past. No, Strange's voice was sharp enough to echo off the temple walls. Time isn't something you change casually. I've seen what happens when people try. The universe has a way of correcting itself, often violently. But you have changed it, Rey pressed, haven't you? That's what you do. Strange thought of the time stone and of the 14 million futures he'd witnessed, of the one path to victory that had required his own death. Only when absolutely necessary, and always at a cost. Rey's shoulders slumped. Then you can't help us. I didn't say that. Strange looked at the ancient texts, at this young woman trying to shoulder an impossible burden, at the two loyal friends who'd followed her to this forgotten place. He recognized soldiers fighting against overwhelming darkness. I said, time manipulation is dangerous, but there are other ways to fight. First, I need to understand what happened to me. You mentioned something called the world between worlds. Rey's eyes lit up. The sacred texts mention it, a place beyond space and time where all moments exist at once. The ancient Jedi discovered it on Lothal, but the temple was destroyed before. Reality rippled. Strange felt it instantly, a disturbance in the energy field Rey called the Force. His hands came up defensively, mystical shields manifesting as golden mandalas. What is that? Finn had his weapon drawn, some kind of energy rifle. Strange closed his eyes, extending his senses. There, a tear in the fabric of this reality, small but growing, and it felt sickeningly familiar, like the rift that had pulled him here. Something's wrong, Strange said. When I arrived, I didn't just appear here. I tore through something. A barrier between my universe and yours. Is that bad? Poe asked. Strange opened his eyes and Rey took an involuntary step back at the intensity in his gaze. That depends. How stable is your reality? How strong is the Force's hold on the structure of your universe? Rey shook her head. I don't understand the question. Then let me put it simply. Strange turned to face them fully. I think my arrival damaged something fundamental, and unless we fix it, both our universes might unravel. Strange stood at the cliff's edge, waves crashing against the rocks far below, while Rey attempted to explain the world between worlds with the limited knowledge the Jedi texts provided. Behind them, Finn and Poe worked on their ship, a battered light freighter they'd flown here in secret. The texts say it's a pathway between all times and places, Rey said, her voice competing with the wind. A Jedi named Ezra Bridger discovered it decades ago. He used it to save someone, but the temple on Lothal was destroyed to seal it away. The Emperor Palpatine wanted to access it, to control all of time. Strange absorbed this, his mind already working through the implications. A nexus point outside normal causality. We have something similar in my universe, the nexus of all realities. But that's a place. This sounds like something else, more conceptual. Master Luke believed it was part of the Force itself, the deepest mystery, where past, present, and future aren't separate but coexist. Rey hugged herself against the cold. Why do you think it matters? Why would your arrival affect it? Because I didn't come through normal space. Strange turned to face her. When that rift pulled me through, I fell through infinite doorways. I saw your galaxy's history flash past. Wars, empires rising and falling. Those weren't random visions. I was falling through time itself. Rey's eyes widened. You fell through the world between worlds. More accurately, I crashed through it like a meteor through a window. Strange looked down at his hands. And windows break. The question is, how badly? A sound made them both turn. Strange's mystical senses flared, danger approaching fast. He saw it a second later. 5 ships dropping out of hyperspace, black and angular, descending toward the island. "First Order," Poe shouted from the ship. "TIE fighters! How did they find us?" Strange didn't wait for explanations. His hands moved in complex patterns, and golden shields materialized in the air above them, geometric constructs that would deflect energy weapons. The TIE fighters opened fire, red bolts streaming down. They struck Strange's shields and deflected harmlessly into the ocean. "Impossible," Finn breathed. "That's impossible." "Rey, get to cover," Strange commanded. "I'll handle this." But Rey didn't run. Instead, she thrust out her hand, and Strange felt the force surge through her. One of the TIE fighters suddenly veered off course, as if grabbed by an invisible hand, and crashed into another. Both exploded in balls of flame. "Or we'll handle it together," Rey said, her eyes fierce. Strange allowed himself a small smile. Then he opened a portal. Still difficult, but he was learning to compensate for this universe's differences. The circular gateway appeared in the path of an incoming TIE fighter. The pilot had no time to react. The ship shot through the portal and emerged from a second portal Strange had opened behind the remaining 2 fighters. The collision was catastrophic. 3 ships destroyed in one move. The last TIE fighter pulled up sharply, attempting to escape. Strange began to form another portal, but Rey raised her hand again. The ship froze in midair, engines screaming against an invisible grip. "Rey, wait!" Strange started. But he felt what she was doing. Not just holding the ship with telekinesis. She was reaching out through the Force, touching the pilot's mind, reading his thoughts. "Kylo Ren sent them," Rey said, her voice distant. "He felt you, felt your power. He's coming." She released the ship and it shot away toward space, limping but functional. Strange lowered his shields. "You let him go," Finn said, running up to them. "Why?" "Because I needed to see who sent them," Rey replied. "And now I know. Kylo felt Dr. Strange arrive. Felt the disturbance in the Force." Strange processed this. "The Force connects everything in this galaxy. When I tore through the world between worlds, every Force-sensitive being must have felt it to some degree." "Which means they all know you're here." Poe climbed down from the ship's boarding ramp. "Great. Just great. The Resistance is hanging by a thread, and now we've got the Supreme Leader of the First Order personally interested in our location." Rey looked at Strange. "We need to leave Ahch-To. Now. If Kylo's coming, let him come," Strange said. "If he felt the disturbance, then he knows about the world between worlds too, which means he might be able to help me understand what's happening." "Help you?" Finn stared at him. "Kylo Ren doesn't help anyone. He's a monster. He murdered his own father." Strange had heard that tone before, the voice of someone who'd faced true darkness and barely survived. "Then we won't ask nicely, but I need information, and right now he might have it." Rey shook her head. "You don't understand what Kylo is, what he's capable of. He's consumed by the dark side of the Force. If he gets his hands on your power, he won't." Strange's voice carried absolute certainty. "Because I've faced cosmic threats before, beings who could reshape reality with a thought. If this Kylo Ren wants to challenge a master of the mystic arts, he's welcome to try." A new sensation rippled through the Force. Strange felt it even without training, a darkness spreading across the fabric of space. Ships were coming, many of them. "We're out of time," Poe said, checking a device on his wrist. Star Destroyer just dropped out of hyperspace. Orbit's about to get real crowded. Rey grabbed Strange's arm. Please, come with us. Let me explain everything properly, show you what we're fighting for, then decide if you want to face Kylo Ren. Strange looked at the young woman, barely more than a girl, really, carrying the weight of an entire order on her shoulders. He thought of the Ancient One, of how she'd taken a chance on a broken surgeon who had nowhere else to turn. All right, he said, but Rey, this disturbance I've caused isn't going away. Eventually, we'll need to address it, and when we do, I'll need your help as much as you need mine. Rey nodded, relief flooding her face. Deal. Everyone aboard, Poe shouted. We're leaving, now. They ran for the ship. As Strange climbed the boarding ramp, he looked back at the ancient temple one last time. Somewhere in this galaxy was a pathway through time itself. A world between worlds that he'd accidentally damaged. And somewhere out there, a dark side wielder was coming for him. Strange had a feeling his exile in this universe was going to be very interesting. The ship, which Poe called the Millennium Falcon with obvious pride, shuddered as it broke atmosphere. Strange gripped a support beam while Rey took the co-pilot's seat. Through the viewport, he saw a vessel that made his breath catch. A massive triangular ship, easily a mile long, bristling with weapons. The Star Destroyer. Chewie, angle deflectors double front, Poe shouted to the massive furry creature at the pilot controls. The being, a Wookiee, Rey had called him, roared something that sounded affirmative. Red energy bolts lanced past them. The Falcon corkscrewed through evasive maneuvers that should have torn it apart. Strange reached out instinctively with the mystic arts, reinforcing the ship's structural integrity with golden light. What are you doing? Finn called from behind him. Keeping us alive, Strange replied. Your ship is held together by hope and duct tape. Yeah, well, she's got it where it counts. Poe yanked the controls hard left. They dove under the Star Destroyer's belly, where the massive ship's weapons couldn't track them. Ahead, Strange saw the blackness of space. True space, not the dimensional void he was used to. Stars that had never shone on Earth. Jumping to light speed in 3, Poe counted down. Wait, Strange said. I need to see something first. He closed his eyes and projected his astral form, his consciousness separating from his body. In this state, Strange could perceive things his physical senses couldn't. He expanded his awareness outward, feeling the shape of this reality. And he saw the crack. The world between worlds existed as a sort of membrane between time and space, a thin barrier that separated what was from what is, from what will be. And running through it, growing wider by the moment, was a fracture. Where Strange had crashed through, the tear leaked temporal energy into normal space. Worse, something was being drawn to it. A darkness that felt ancient and hungry. Strange couldn't identify it clearly. The Force interfered with his astral sight in strange ways, but he felt its attention turning toward the breach. Strange. He snapped back to his body, gasping. Rey was shaking his shoulder, her face pale. You stopped breathing, she said. What happened? The damage is worse than I thought. Strange steadied himself, and something's noticed it. Something old. Old how? Finn asked. Before Strange could answer, the ship lurched. Through the viewport, the stars elongated into lines of light. They'd entered hyperspace. Strange stared at the impossible tunnel of light surrounding them. Is this how you travel between solar systems? Faster than light, Poe explained, relaxing now that they'd escaped. Hyperspace. We'll reach the resistance base in a few hours. You can explain everything to General Organa then. General Organa, Strange repeated. And she leads this resistance? "What's left of it?" Rey said quietly. She gestured for Strange to follow her deeper into the ship, away from the cockpit. They ended up in a small lounge area with circular benches. Rey sat heavily, exhaustion written across her features. "We're losing," she said simply. "The First Order rose from the Empire's ashes, and they're stronger than we ever imagined. General Organa, Leia, she's been fighting her entire life. Her brother Luke gave up after his attempt to restart the Jedi Order failed. Now there's just me, one Jedi against an entire military machine." Strange sat across from her. "And this Kylo Ren. You know him." It wasn't a question. Rey's reaction to the name had been too personal, too pained. "Ben Solo," Rey said. "That's his real name, Leia's son. He turned to the dark side, destroyed Luke's academy, killed his father, and now—" She looked up at Strange, "He's obsessed with legacy, with power. If he learns what you can do, if he discovers you can manipulate time and space, he'll want that power for himself." Strange understood the pattern. He'd seen it before. "That's why you wanted to learn from me, not just to help the Resistance, but to match him." Rey's jaw tightened. "I need to be strong enough to stop him, to save him, to—" She stopped as if revealing too much. "The Force connects us. I don't know why, but I feel him and he feels me. It's like we're two halves of something." Strange thought of the Ancient One's words about balance, light and dark, always in tension. "In my universe, we have a concept called the Vishanti and the dread Dormammu, light and dark, eternally opposed but connected. Perhaps you and Kylo Ren are something similar." "I don't want to be connected to him," Rey said fiercely. "I want to stop him." "Those might not be mutually exclusive goals." Before Rey could respond, an alarm blared throughout the ship. Poe's voice came over the intercom. "We've got a problem. Something just yanked us out of hyperspace." Strange and Rey rushed back to the cockpit. Through the viewport, they'd emerged in a region of space dominated by a massive structure, not a ship, but some kind of ancient station or temple, floating impossibly in the void. "What is that?" Strange asked. Rey's face had gone white. "That's impossible. The record said it was destroyed. That's the Lothal Temple, the gateway to the world between worlds." "Somebody rebuilt it," Finn said, working the sensors. "And it's active. Reading massive energy signatures. Force energy, but weird, distorted." Strange felt it too, the same temporal distortion he'd sensed earlier, but amplified 1,000-fold. The crack he'd seen in the world between worlds. It was centered here. "We need to leave," Poe said, already turning the ship. "This smells like a trap." But Strange was watching the temple, and he saw movement, ships emerging from behind it. Not the angular TIE fighters from before. These were older, more elegant, and leading them was a single figure standing on an open boarding ramp, visible even at this distance. The figure wore black robes and a distinctive mask. Through the Force, Strange felt his attention like a dark sun. Kylo Ren had found them, and he'd found them at the one place in the galaxy where Strange's presence had torn reality itself. "Rey," Kylo's voice echoed through every speaker on the Falcon, amplified by the Force itself. "I know you can hear me. I know he's with you, the one who broke through, who opened the door." Strange stepped forward. "Then let's talk. If you know what's happening, I know that you're the key." Kylo's presence pressed against Strange's mind, testing his defenses. Strange pushed back with practiced ease, and he felt Kylo's surprise. Strong, untrained in the Force, but strong, good. The world between worlds requires strength to access, and you're going to open it for me. "Not likely," Strange replied. "Then watch." Kylo raised his hand. The temple activated. Light erupted from its center. Not the steady glow of power, but the chaotic flare of something breaking. Strange saw it through mystical and physical sight simultaneously, the membrane between times tearing wider, temporal energy bleeding into space. And through the tear, Strange saw them, moments from across the galaxy's history, playing out simultaneously. He saw massive battles, the rise and fall of empires, the birth and death of stars. And in the center of it all, something dark waited. "By the Vishanti," Strange whispered. "He's destabilizing the entire timeline." Rey gripped his arm. "Can you stop it?" Strange calculated quickly. To seal that breach, he'd need to enter the world between worlds directly, navigate its pathways, find the exact moment where he'd crash through and repair the damage from the inside. It would take everything he had, and he might not survive. "I can stop it," Strange said, "but I'll need your help. All of you." Kylo's voice came again, darker now. "Come to the temple, sorcerer. Face me in the place beyond time, or watch as I unravel every moment that ever was." Strange looked at Rey, at Finn and Poe, at the crew of misfits who'd taken him in without question. "How do you feel about facing down a dark side user in a crumbling temporal nexus?" Strange asked. Poe grinned despite the tension. "Just another Tuesday for the Resistance." "Then let's go save your timeline." Strange's hands began to glow with eldritch energy, "before it's too late for both our universes." The Millennium Falcon docked with the Lothal Temple under the watchful eyes of Kylo Ren's command ship. Strange could feel the Supreme Leader's presence like a gravitational well, bending the Force around him. As the boarding ramp lowered, Rey ignited her lightsaber, a blade of brilliant blue plasma that hummed with contained energy. "Stay close," she warned. "Kylo plays mind games. He'll try to get inside your head." Strange smiled thinly. "I've had ancient demons attempt that. Let him try." They walked across a bridge of energy that shouldn't exist, pure force manifestation holding matter together in the vacuum. Strange studied it with professional fascination. The Force truly was remarkable, a kind of universal consciousness that could be shaped by will alone. Not so different from the mystic arts, after all. The temple interior was vast, its walls covered in symbols that shifted and changed as Strange watched. Time wasn't stable here. He saw the same pillar simultaneously pristine and crumbling with age, a doorway that was both open and sealed. Kylo Ren waited at the chamber's center, his masked face turned toward them. Behind him, the world between worlds manifested as a massive circular portal filled with countless doorways, each one showing a different moment in history. Strange saw a young man with a lightsaber facing a dark figure on a catwalk, saw massive ships emerging from ice, saw a desert planet where twin suns burned. "You see it," Kylo said, his voice modulated by the mask. "The truth, that time is not linear, that the past, present, and future are one. I see a temporal nexus being destabilized by someone who doesn't understand what he's tampering with," Strange replied. "Shut it down, now, before you tear a hole in causality itself." Kylo's hand moved to his belt, and a crimson lightsaber blade erupted to life, crackling with unstable energy. "I understand perfectly. The world between worlds is power, the power to change what was, to ensure what will be." He turned his masked face toward Rey, "the power to undo every mistake, every loss." "Ben, please," Rey said, and Strange heard the pain in her voice. "This isn't the way. You're going to destroy everything." "Ben Solo is dead," Kylo replied. "I killed him, just as I'll kill this disturbance if he won't help me." Strange stepped forward, placing himself between Rey and Kylo. You felt me arrive, felt the breach I created. That's why you came here, why you activated the temple. You think I can control the world between worlds. Can't you? Kylo's presence pressed harder. You fell through it, survived it. That makes you unique. The ancient Jedi who discovered this place could only observe, only witness. But you traveled through it. You can navigate it. Strange considered lying, then decided against it. Kylo would sense deception. Possibly, but that doesn't mean I will. Time isn't meant to be changed casually. The consequences, I know the consequences. Kylo's voice rose, and the temple trembled. I've seen them. Every path I've walked leads to the same place, the same pattern repeating. Light, dark, an endless cycle. But if I could go back, change the moment where it all went wrong, you'd create a paradox, Strange interrupted. You'd fracture the timeline into infinite branches, each one unstable, each one collapsing. I've studied temporal mechanics across multiple dimensions. What you're proposing would be catastrophic. Then what would you do? Kylo demanded. You're trapped here, cut off from your reality. Don't you want to go home? The world between worlds connects all realities, all dimensions. If we work together. No, Strange's voice carried absolute finality. I won't help you break time to serve your redemption fantasy. The temperature dropped. Strange felt Kylo's rage building, a dark pressure that made the air itself feel heavy. Around them, the doorways in the world between worlds began to flicker more rapidly, showing moments of violence and war. Then you'll die here, Kylo said. He moved with shocking speed, closing the distance in a heartbeat. His lightsaber came down in a brutal overhead strike. Strange's hands swept up, mystical shields manifesting as golden geometric patterns. The lightsaber struck the shield and stopped, plasma blade hissing against magical construct. Impressive, Strange said, but I've fought beings who could destroy planets with a thought. He pushed and Kylo staggered back. Rey moved to Strange's side, her own lightsaber raised. Finn and Poe had taken defensive positions near the entrance, weapons drawn. You don't have to do this, Ben, Rey called out. We can find another way. There is no other way, Kylo roared. He thrust out his hand and Strange felt an invisible force grip him, telekinesis, but channeled through the force. It was strong, incredibly strong. Strange felt himself being lifted off the ground, but he'd faced telekinesis before. He reached into the mystical dimensions he could still access, drawing power, and broke Kylo's grip with a surge of eldritch energy. Golden light exploded outward, forcing Kylo to shield his eyes. You think the Force makes you powerful? Strange said, his voice echoing with otherworldly resonance. His astral form partially manifested, overlaying his physical body with spectral energy. Let me show you what a master of the mystic arts can do. Strange gestured, and the crimson bands of Sith-Horak materialized, mystical constructs that wrapped around Kylo like living chains. The Supreme Leader struggled, but the bands held for a moment. Then Kylo screamed, and the Force erupted from him in a shockwave of dark energy. The bands shattered. Strange was thrown backward, crashing into a pillar. His cloak of levitation snapped out, cushioning the impact, but he felt the blow. Strong. Kylo Ren was extraordinarily strong. You're not the only one who can draw on power beyond yourself, Kylo said. He raised both hands and Strange felt him reaching through the Force, tapping into the dark side itself. Energy crackled around Kylo's fingers, not lightning but something raw, more primal. Rey moved between them. Enough, both of you, don't you see? This is exactly what's making it worse. Strange looked at the world between worlds. Rey was right. Their conflict, the energies they were throwing around, were destabilizing the Nexus further. The doorways were multiplying, fracturing into smaller and smaller windows. He could see the same moment playing out in dozens of variations. We're feeding it, Strange realized. Our powers, the Force, the mystic arts, they're all just different forms of reality manipulation, and in a place where reality is already compromised. We're making the tear bigger, Rey finished. We need to stop fighting and start fixing this. Kylo lowered his hands, but his posture remained aggressive. Then tell him to help me. Tell him to use his power to change what needs to be changed. I can't do that, Strange said. But I can seal the breach, repair the damage I caused, and in doing so, stabilize the world between worlds, so it can remain forever out of reach. Kylo shook his head. No. If I can't use it, no one will. He moved toward the portal, his intention clear. He was going to enter the world between worlds himself. Consequences be damned. Rey didn't hesitate. She leaped forward, her lightsaber intercepting Kylo's before he could reach the portal. Blue and red blades locked together, sparking and hissing. I won't let you destroy everything, Rey shouted. Then stop me. Kylo pressed harder, using his superior strength. Strange saw his opening. While they were locked in combat, he could work. His hands moved in complex patterns, weaving a spell he'd learned from the Ancient One, a temporal stabilization matrix. Golden light spread from his fingers, forming a web of mystical energy that began to surround the world between worlds. Kylo sensed what he was doing and disengaged from Rey, turning toward Strange with fury. No, you can't seal it! But Finn had moved into position. He opened fire with his blaster, forcing Kylo to deflect the bolts with his lightsaber. Poe joined in from the other side, creating a crossfire that kept the Supreme Leader occupied. Strange poured more power into the spell. He could feel the breach, feel the edges of the tear where he'd crashed through. If he could just knit them back together, reinforce the membrane. Pain exploded through his skull. Kylo had abandoned his lightsaber and was attacking Strange's mind directly, using the Force to assault his consciousness. Strange's concentration wavered. The spell began to unravel. Your mind is strong, Kylo's voice echoed in Strange's thoughts, but not strong enough. I've torn through the defenses of Jedi Masters. What chance does an outsider have? Strange gritted his teeth, fighting back. But Kylo was right. This wasn't an attack he was trained to defend against. The Force operated on different principles than the mental assaults he'd learned to block out. Then Rey was there in his mind, her presence like cool water against Kylo's burning assault. I've got you, she said. Block him out. I'll show you how. She guided Strange, teaching him in seconds what should take years, how to center himself in the Force, how to create a mental shield not of mystical energy but of pure will. Together, they pushed Kylo out. Kylo staggered physically, shocked by their combined resistance. You're working together, learning from each other. He sounded almost afraid. You're merging the Force and his magic. Strange realized Kylo was right. In that moment of connection with Rey, he'd felt how the Force and the mystic arts could intertwine, two different systems of reality manipulation complementing each other. And in the world between worlds, where time and space were already fluid, that combination was incredibly dangerous. We have to leave, Strange said urgently. All of us, now, before we make this exponentially worse. But it was already too late. The world between worlds responded to the new energies, expanding, growing, swallowing the chamber. Doorways multiplied exponentially, showing infinite moments, infinite possibilities. And through one of those doorways, Strange saw something that made his blood run cold. A figure in dark robes, seated on a throne, eyes glowing with sickly yellow light. Ancient beyond measure, dead yet somehow alive, the figure's eyes fixed on Strange, and smiled. "Oh no," Rey whispered. "That's impossible. He's dead. We destroyed him." "Who?" Strange demanded. "Emperor Palpatine," Rey said, her voice shaking. "The most powerful Sith Lord in history. And we just opened a window directly to him." The temple shuddered as Palpatine's presence pressed against the world between worlds from the other side. Strange could feel the ancient evil probing, testing, seeking a way through. The doorways multiplied further, fracturing reality into a kaleidoscope of possible moments. "Close it!" Kylo shouted, and for the first time Strange heard genuine fear in his voice. "Close it now!" "I'm trying." Strange's hands wove defensive patterns, but the breach was beyond his ability to seal alone. Every spell he cast seemed to create two more problems. The mystic arts were designed for a stable reality, not this temporal nightmare. Through the doorways, Strange caught glimpses of Palpatine's timeline, a hidden facility on a dark world, massive fleets of star destroyers being built in secret, cultists chanting in unknown languages. This wasn't just a threat to the present. Palpatine had been planning something for decades. "Exegol," Rey breathed, seeing the same visions. "That's where he's been hiding, where the Sith Eternal have been building the Final Order." Final Order? Strange divided his attention between the spell work and the conversation. "Thousands of star destroyers," Poe said from the entrance, still covering their position. "Each one capable of destroying a planet. It's a legend. A nightmare story we tell in the Resistance." "Not a legend," Kylo said bitterly. "My master told me about it. Told me I would lead those ships when the time came. That's why he's been watching, waiting. And now you've given him a way to accelerate his timeline." Strange saw it clearly now. Palpatine's consciousness, somehow preserved beyond death, had sensed the breach in the world between worlds. He was using it to observe the present, to calculate the perfect moment to reveal himself. And worse, Strange could feel him pulling energy through the doorways, feeding on the temporal instability. "He's draining the Nexus," Strange said, "using the breach to sustain himself across time." "Then we destroy the temple," Finn suggested. "Blow it up from the inside." "That would collapse the world between worlds entirely," Rey protested. "Seal it forever." "Is that so bad?" Finn asked. "Better sealed than in Palpatine's hands?" Strange considered it. A controlled collapse of the Nexus would prevent anyone from ever accessing it again. But it would also strand him here permanently. No chance of finding a way home, no hope of reconnecting with his universe. And it would kill them all in the process. "There's another option," Strange said slowly. "We don't seal the world between worlds, we use it." Everyone turned to stare at him. "That's insane," Poe said. "Probably," Strange agreed. "But think about it. Right now, Palpatine is observing us through these doorways. He's seeing the present, calculating his next move. But the world between worlds doesn't just show the present, it shows all times." "You want to go back," Kylo said, understanding dawning. "You want to enter the world between worlds and change something in the past." "Not change," Strange corrected. "Observe. Learn. Find the exact moment when Palpatine began preserving his consciousness. Understand how he's doing it. Then we can figure out how to stop him permanently." Rey shook her head. "The texts warn against using the world between worlds. The Jedi who discovered it learned that even observing the past can have consequences, and actually changing it is impossible without creating paradoxes, I know." Strange moved closer to the portal, but gathering intelligence isn't the same as interference. If we can see how Palpatine survived death, we might find his weakness. And if we can't, Rey asked, then we're no worse off than we are now. Strange extended his hand toward the world between worlds. Golden light flowed from his fingers, interacting with the Force energy that comprised the Nexus. The combination created something new, patterns that belonged to neither system but incorporated both. Kylo watched intently. You're adapting, learning to channel the Force through your magic. Or channeling magic through the Force, Strange replied. At this level, the distinction becomes meaningless. Rey, I need your help. You understand the Force in ways I don't. Together, we might be able to navigate the world between worlds without getting lost. Rey looked at the portal, at the infinite doorways showing infinite moments. Strange could see her fear, but also her determination. She'd faced impossible odds before. What about me? Kylo asked. You stay here, Rey said firmly. Keep Palpatine's attention divided. If he's watching you, he might not notice us entering the pathways. Kylo's hand tightened on his lightsaber. For a moment, Strange thought he might refuse, might attack them out of sheer stubbornness. Then, surprisingly, he nodded. Go, Kylo said. But Rey, when this is over, you and I still have unfinished business. I know, Rey said quietly. Strange turned to Finn and Poe. Guard this position. Don't let anyone else enter the temple. And if something comes through those doorways, shoot first, ask questions later, Poe finished. Got it. Strange and Rey approached the world between worlds together. Up close, it was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Strange could see the fundamental structure of causality itself, the threads that connected every moment to every other moment. One wrong move, one careless action, and they could unravel the entire timeline. Ready? Strange asked. No, Rey admitted, but let's do it anyway. They stepped through together. The sensation was indescribable. Strange felt himself existing in multiple moments simultaneously. He was in the temple, but also on Titan facing Thanos. He was in the Sanctum Sanctorum, but also here, in this alien galaxy. Past, present, and future crashed together in his consciousness. Rey gripped his hand, anchoring him. Through their connection, Strange felt her doing the same, using his presence to stay grounded as the Force threatened to overwhelm her perceptions. Focus, Strange said. We're looking for Palpatine, the moment he began his resurrection. They moved through the pathways, and Strange realized movement here wasn't physical. It was intentional. They traveled by thinking about where they wanted to go, by focusing their combined will on finding the answer they sought. Doorways flashed past. Strange saw Rey's memories, a desert scavenger yard, training with Luke Skywalker, dueling Kylo Ren in a burning forest. Saw Kylo's memories too, bleeding through the Force connection Rey shared with him. A young boy watching his uncle ignite a lightsaber above him, the moment of betrayal that had defined everything after. There, Rey said, pointing to a doorway that pulsed with dark energy. They approached it cautiously. Through the opening, Strange saw a throne room, the same figure he'd seen before, Emperor Palpatine, but younger, more vital. He was performing some kind of ritual, dark side energy swirling around him. This is before his death, Rey said, before he fell down the reactor shaft. He's preparing, creating a backup, a way to transfer his consciousness if his body is destroyed. Strange watched, memorizing every detail of the ritual. It was sophisticated, combining Sith sorcery with cloning technology, creating vessels that could house his spirit. But there was a weakness. The vessels were imperfect, deteriorating rapidly. Palpatine was essentially buying time, centuries of it perhaps, but at a terrible cost. He's trapped between life and death, Strange observed, sustained by the dark side but never truly alive. That's why he needs the final order. He's running out of time, his current body is failing. So if we can destroy his clone vessels, Rey started. We cripple his ability to resurrect, Strange finished, but we need to know where they're stored. They moved deeper into the memory, following Palpatine through the doorway. Strange felt the danger immediately. They were no longer just observing. They were inside the moment, invisible but present. One wrong move, and they could affect the past. Palpatine moved through his palace with purpose, descending into levels that shouldn't exist. Strange recognized the architectural style. This was part of the second Death Star. But Palpatine had built secret chambers here, places where his true work continued. Exegol, Palpatine said to an attendant. Transfer the vessels to Exegol, in the unknown regions beyond the reach of the rebellion. There, the Sith Eternal will guard them until the time comes. The attendant bowed and hurried away. Palpatine turned and looked directly at Strange and Rey. "Impossible," Rey whispered, but Palpatine smiled, that same terrible smile Strange had seen through the doorway. "Did you think you could spy on a Sith Lord undetected? I've walked these pathways before, studied them, mastered them." His hand shot out, and dark lightning arced toward them, not through space, but through time itself. Strange threw up a shield, but the lightning was unlike anything he'd faced. It wasn't just energy. It was the weaponization of causality itself, trying to erase them from the timeline. "Run!" Strange shouted. They fled back through the doorway, Palpatine's laughter following them. The lightning pursued, seeking, hunting. Strange wove defensive spells behind them, but they were only buying seconds. "He's too strong here," Rey called out. "In the world between worlds, time is his domain." Strange had an idea. Dangerous, possibly suicidal, but it might work. "Rey, trust me." He stopped running and turned to face the pursuing lightning. Instead of blocking it, Strange opened himself to it, let it strike him fully. The pain was excruciating, but he'd endured worse. And more importantly, he analyzed it. Felt how Palpatine was channeling his power through the world between worlds, using the Nexus itself as a weapon. And if Palpatine could do that, so could he. Strange reached deep into his training, into the most forbidden techniques the Ancient One had shown him. He touched the Dark Dimension's power, just a fragment, just enough. Combined it with the Force energy Rey was unconsciously channeling through their connection, and he pushed back. The lightning reversed, flowing backward through time, seeking its source. Strange heard Palpatine's surprised grunt as his own attack returned to him. Not enough to harm the ancient Sith Lord, but enough to break his concentration. "Now!" Strange grabbed Rey, and they ran. They emerged from the world between worlds, back into the temple, both of them collapsing to the floor. Strange's body felt like it had aged a decade. Rey was gasping, her connection to the Force strained to its limit. "What happened?" Kylo demanded, moving toward Rey. "Palpatine," Strange managed. "He knew we were watching. He's been preparing for this possibility for decades. The world between worlds. He's studied it far longer than we realized." "But we got what we needed," Rey said, pushing herself to her knees. "Exegol. His clone bodies are on Exegol, in the unknown regions. If we can destroy them..." The temple shook violently. Through the world between worlds, Strange saw why. Palpatine wasn't just defending himself, he was attacking. Dark side energy poured through the breach, widening it, using it as a bridge to project his power into the present. "He's coming through," Finn said, backing away from the portal. "That's impossible. He's supposed to be dead, but he's coming through." Strange forced himself to stand. They'd made a terrible mistake. By entering the world between worlds, By confronting Palpatine in his own domain, they'd given him exactly what he needed, a direct connection to the present timeline. And now the most powerful Sith Lord in history was breaking free from his temporal prison. Dark energy erupted from the world between worlds like a tidal wave. Strange threw up shields reflexively, but the power wasn't aimed at them, not yet. Instead, it coalesced in the center of the chamber, forming a shape, a presence. Emperor Palpatine manifested as a hologram of pure force energy, his form flickering between different ages, young and vital, then ancient and withered, then something in between. His existence in the world between worlds allowed him to project himself across multiple timelines simultaneously. "Impressive," Palpatine said, his voice echoing with the weight of centuries. "A sorcerer from beyond the stars. I sensed your arrival, Doctor Strange. Felt you tear through the fabric of reality itself, and now you've given me exactly what I needed." "I've given you nothing," Strange replied, his hands glowing with defensive magic. "On the contrary." Palpatine's form solidified slightly, becoming more defined. "For decades, I've observed the world between worlds from the shadows, studied it. But I could never fully access it, never project my consciousness through it with enough strength to matter. The breach you created changed that. You weakened the barriers, made the pathways vulnerable." Kylo stepped forward, his lightsaber ignited. "My master, I should have known you'd find a way back." "Master," Palpatine laughed, a sound like breaking bones. "Oh, young Solo, you were never meant to be my apprentice. You were a placeholder, a distraction while I prepared the final order. Did you truly believe I needed you?" Strange saw Kylo flinch as if struck. The psychological warfare was as devastating as any physical attack. Palpatine was dismantling Kylo's entire identity with a few words. "Don't listen to him," Rey said, moving to stand between Kylo and the projection. "He's manipulating you. That's what he does." "The girl speaks truth," Palpatine said, his attention shifting to Rey. "And speaking of truth, shall I tell them yours, child? Shall I reveal what you've been running from?" Rey's face went pale. "No. You're no one," Palpatine continued, savoring each word. "A nobody from nowhere, but also my granddaughter, my blood, my legacy." The chamber went silent except for the hum of energy from the world between worlds. Strange looked at Rey, saw the confirmation in her stricken expression. This was a secret she'd been carrying, a truth she'd been trying to escape. "That's why our connection is so strong," Kylo said slowly. "Light and dark, Skywalker and Palpatine, the Force binding us together." "Precisely," Palpatine said, "the grandson of Vader and the granddaughter of Sidious. Together, you could have ruled the galaxy. But you've both proven disappointingly weak, clinging to sentiment, to hope." His form pulsed with dark energy. "No matter. The final order will rise regardless. And this sorcerer," he turned his terrible gaze on Strange, "will help me ensure it happens on my schedule." "I'm not helping you do anything," Strange said. "You already have." Palpatine gestured, and the world between worlds responded to his will. Doorways began opening rapidly, showing specific moments. "Watch, see what I've seen. The future where the resistance is crushed, where my fleet emerges from Exegol to burn 1,000 worlds, where order is finally, permanently restored to the galaxy." Strange saw the visions. Massive star destroyers erupting from a dark planet, planetary defense systems being overwhelmed, cities burning. It was conquest on an unimaginable scale. The First Order had been terrible, but the Final Order would be apocalyptic. "And you," Palpatine said to Strange, "with your mastery of dimensional travel, Your knowledge of realities beyond this one. You'll open new pathways for my fleet, new galaxies to conquer, newer realities to dominate. That's your plan? Strange almost laughed. You think I'll help you become a multiversal tyrant? I think you'll do whatever necessary to survive, Palpatine replied, and to protect these new friends you've made. Tell me, Doctor, would you sacrifice Rey to save your own universe? Would you abandon this galaxy to preserve yours? Strange met Palpatine's gaze steadily. I've made harder choices than that, and I've learned that sometimes the answer isn't choosing between two options, it's finding a third. He turned to Rey, to Kylo, to Finn and Poe. We're going to Exegol. We're going to destroy those clone bodies before Palpatine can fully resurrect. And then we're going to seal the world between worlds properly, not just close it, but repair it. Make it impossible for anyone, even him, to exploit it again. Impossible, Palpatine said. I'll hunt you across every world. The final order will find you wherever you hide. Then let them come. Strange's hands moved in a complex pattern, and he began weaving a spell unlike any he'd cast before, drawing on the Force through his connection with Rey, combining it with the mystic arts, creating something entirely new. Because I'm done playing defense, it's time to take this fight to you. The spell manifested as a network of golden light that spread through the world between worlds, mapping its structure. Strange could see the pathways now, understand how they connected. And he saw the corruption, the dark energy Palpatine had been feeding into the Nexus for decades, warping it, preparing it for his eventual dominance. You can't cleanse the world between worlds, Palpatine said, but for the first time Strange heard uncertainty in his voice. It's beyond even your power. Alone? Maybe. Strange looked at Rey. But I'm not alone. Rey stepped forward, understanding what Strange needed. She placed her hand over his, and the Force flowed through her, pure and bright. Not the corrupted dark side energy Palpatine used, but the living Force itself, the energy of life, of connection, of hope. Combined with Strange's magic, it was radiant. The golden light turned white, spreading through the world between worlds like dawn breaking over a dark planet. Wherever it touched, Palpatine's corruption burned away. No! Palpatine's projection flickered. What are you doing? Showing you that you've already lost, Rey said. You're not the only one who can learn, who can grow. Dr. Strange has shown me that the Force and magic are just different names for the same thing, the power to shape reality through will. And our will is stronger than yours. The cleansing light reached Palpatine's projection and he screamed, a sound that echoed across timelines. His form shattered, fragmenting back into the various ages he'd lived through. For just a moment, Strange saw the truth. Palpatine wasn't one being anymore. He was dozens of failed clones, all barely holding together, all desperate for the resurrection that would make him whole again. The projection vanished. The temple stopped shaking. The world between worlds stabilized. Its doorways returning to their natural state, observable windows into the past. Nothing more. Strange collapsed to one knee, exhausted. Rey caught him, holding him upright. Is he gone? Finn asked. No, Strange said. We disrupted his projection, cleansed the corruption he'd spread through the world between worlds, but his physical body is still on Exegol, still building toward his return. We've bought time, nothing more. Kylo Ren stood apart from them, his lightsaber extinguished. Strange could see the conflict in his posture. Everything he'd believed had just been shattered. His master had called him a placeholder. His enemy had saved them all. His entire worldview was collapsing. Then, Rey said softly, help us stop him for good. Why? Kylo's voice was hollow. You heard him. I'm nothing. a distraction. Everything I've done, everyone I've killed, it was all meaningless." "That's not true," Strange said, forcing himself to stand. "Palpatine is a master manipulator. He told you what would hurt you most because that's how he maintains control. But your choices are still your own. The question is, what will you choose now?" Kylo looked at his hands, at the lightsaber he'd used to kill his father. "I've done terrible things." "So have I," Strange said quietly. "I've manipulated time, violated the natural order, made choices that cost lives. Redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing differently in the present." "We need to leave," Poe interrupted. "That disturbance is going to bring every First Order ship in the sector. We need to get to the Resistance, warn General Organa, and plan our assault on Exegol." Strange nodded. Poe was right. They'd won this battle, but the war was far from over. Palpatine would be gathering his strength, accelerating his plans. They had to move fast. "Kylo," Rey said. "Ben, come with us." For a long moment, the supreme leader of the First Order stood silent. Then, slowly, he reached up and removed his mask. Beneath it was a young man, scarred and exhausted, but still human, still capable of choice. "Ben Solo," he said, as if testing the name after years of denial. "That's who I was, who I might be again." He looked at Rey. "If I do this, if I turn against the First Order, they'll hunt me. They'll never stop." "They're already hunting us," Finn pointed out. "Welcome to the Resistance." Ben allowed himself a small, bitter smile. "The Resistance, my mother's cause. The one I've spent years trying to destroy." He looked at Strange. "You said redemption is about choosing differently. Let's see if you're right." Strange felt the world between worlds behind them, stabilized now but still vulnerable. The breach he'd created was sealed, but the underlying damage remained. Eventually, he'd need to return here, to complete the repairs, to ensure no one, not Palpatine, not anyone, could exploit the temporal nexus again. But first, they had a resurrection to prevent. "To Exegol," Strange said, "to end this threat once and for all." As they made their way back to the Millennium Falcon, Strange cast one last look at the world between worlds. Somewhere in those infinite pathways was his own timeline, his own universe. Wong, the Sanctum, Earth itself. He'd find his way back, eventually. But right now, this galaxy needed him. And Dr. Stephen Strange had never walked away from people who needed help, even if they were an entire galaxy far, far away. The Millennium Falcon streaked through hyperspace, its crew gathered in the main hold. Strange sat cross-legged on the deck, meditating, or what passed for meditation in a ship traveling faster than light. The force currents here were fascinating, flowing around the hyperspace tunnel like water around a stone. He was learning to read them, to understand the rhythms of this galaxy's fundamental energy. Rey sat across from him, similarly positioned. Between them floated a small device, some kind of training remote, Finn had called it. They were practicing what Strange had begun to call hybrid channeling, using the Force and the mystic arts simultaneously. "Feel the object's weight," Strange instructed. "Its mass, its position in space. Now hold that awareness while simultaneously perceiving it as a construct of energy that can be reshaped." The remote trembled, then split into two identical copies. Rey gasped and lost concentration. The copies merged back into one and clattered to the deck. "I almost had it," she said, frustrated. "You did have it," Strange corrected. "For 3 seconds you held matter in a superposition state, simultaneously one object and two. That's advanced sorcery. Most students at Kamartaj train for years before attempting it. But I can't maintain it." "Not yet." Strange picked up the remote and handed it back to her. The Force gives you instinctive power. My training gives you technique. Together, they're formidable, but formidable isn't enough against what we're facing." Ben Solo leaned against the wall, watching them with an unreadable expression. He'd shed his Supreme Leader armor for simple black clothing, but he still carried his lightsaber. Old habits died hard. "Palpatine won't be alone on Exegol," Ben said. "The Sith Eternal are fanatics. They've been preparing for his return for decades, and the planet itself, it's saturated with dark side energy. Fighting there will be like fighting underwater. Every movement harder, every breath an effort." "Then we adapt," Strange said. He stood, his cloak of levitation settling around his shoulders. "Show me what I'll be facing. What is a Sith Eternal cultist capable of?" Ben ignited his lightsaber, the crimson blade crackling with unstable energy. "They're not all Force sensitive, but the ones who are have studied ancient techniques. Forbidden knowledge from the old Sith Empire." He moved into a fighting stance. "And they worship Palpatine like a god. They'll die before they let us reach him. Good thing I'm not planning to ask permission." Strange's hands began to glow. "Attack me. Show me what dark side combat looks like." Ben hesitated only a moment, then moved. He was fast, faster than Strange expected. The lightsaber came in low, angling for Strange's legs. Strange conjured a shield, but Ben was already pivoting, using the Force to throw a cargo crate at Strange's head. Strange portaled the crate away. It emerged from another portal behind Ben, forcing him to dodge. Ben used the momentum to flip over Strange, landing behind him. The lightsaber came down. The cloak of levitation intercepted it, the fabric somehow not burning despite the plasma blade's heat. Strange spun, and eldritch whips manifested in his hands. He lashed out, and Ben was forced to retreat, deflecting the mystical constructs with his blade. "Interesting," Ben said, breathing harder. "Your magic, it doesn't interact with the Force like I expected. It's orthogonal to it. Perpendicular." "Exactly." Strange pressed the attack, the whips multiplying. "The Force is intrinsic to your universe. Magic comes from outside it. That makes it harder to defend against with Force techniques alone." Ben raised his hand, and Strange felt the invisible grip of telekinesis. But this time he was ready. He drew on the Force through his connection with Rey, using it to reinforce his position in space. Ben's grip slipped. "You're learning too fast," Ben said, and Strange heard grudging respect. "At this rate, you'll be more dangerous than any Jedi." "That's the plan," Strange dismissed the whips. "But I'll need more than parlor tricks against Palpatine. He's had decades to perfect his resurrection. He'll be at full power, or close to it." "Not quite full power," Rey interjected. She'd been studying a datapad, one of the ancient texts she'd brought from Ach-To, now digitized. The texts mention the rule of two, only two Sith at a time, a master and an apprentice. That's because the dark side is consuming. The more you use it, the more it corrupts you. Even with clone bodies, Palpatine is paying a price. Strange considered this. He's powerful but unstable. The clones are imperfect vessels. That's his weakness. That's why he needs the final order, Ben added. The fleet isn't just for conquest, it's a distraction. While the galaxy burns, he can complete his final resurrection ritual, transfer his consciousness into a perfect clone body, one that won't decay. Then we interrupt the ritual. Strange looked between them. "Rey, you'll need to distract Palpatine. Keep him focused on you while I destroy the clone vessels." "Ben, I'll handle the Sith Eternal," Ben finished. "They followed me as Supreme Leader. Let's see how they react when I turn my lightsaber against them." Poe's voice came over the intercom. Hate to interrupt the strategy session, but we're approaching the unknown regions, and we've got company. They rushed to the cockpit. Through the viewport, Strange saw ships emerging from hyperspace around them, dozens of them all bearing First-Order markings, TIE fighters, Star Destroyers, and something larger, a command ship. They followed us, Finn said grimly, or they were already headed to Exegol. The Steadfast, Ben identified the command ship, General Pride's flagship. He's Palpatine's most loyal servant in the First Order. If he's here, it means the Emperor's resurrection is imminent. The comm crackled to life. Millennium Falcon, this is General Pride. I know you're aboard, Traitor Solo. Surrender now and your friends might survive. Resist and the Emperor will feast on your suffering. Strange moved to the comm. General Pride, Dr. Stephen Strange. I'm afraid we can't surrender. We have an appointment with your Emperor, and we'd hate to be late. A pause, then. The Sorcerer. His Excellence has spoken of you. He looks forward to adding your power to his own. The channel went dead. The Star Destroyers opened fire. Chewie roared and threw the Falcon into evasive maneuvers. Strange gripped the co-pilot's seat, fighting nausea. He'd traveled through dimensions, but somehow this form of motion sickness was worse. I can't shake them all, Poe shouted. Too many fighters. Strange made a decision. Get me to the dorsal turret. I have an idea. You know how to shoot? Finn asked. I'm not going to shoot. Strange was already moving. Rey, with me, we're going to try something experimental. They climbed into the turret, a rotating bubble on top of the Falcon with mounted weapons. Rey took the gunner's seat while Strange stood behind her, hands on her shoulders. What are we doing? Rey asked. Expanding your range. Strange began channeling mystical energy through their connection. You can move objects with the Force, right? Push and pull them. Yes, but not at this distance. Not while they're moving so fast. You're thinking like a Jedi. Think like a sorcerer. Strange's hands glowed, and golden geometric patterns appeared around Rey. I'm going to amplify your connection to the Force, give you a framework to extend your reach. When you feel it, trust your instincts. Rey closed her eyes. Strange felt her consciousness expand, reaching outward through the Force. But now it was channeled through mystical constructs, runic circles that acted as focusing lenses, magnifying her power. Rey's eyes snapped open, glowing with golden light. She raised her hand, and a TIE fighter simply stopped, froze in space as if time itself had halted. The fighters behind it crashed into it, creating a chain reaction of explosions. Impossible, Rey whispered. Not impossible. Just improbable. Strange was sweating with the effort of maintaining the amplification. Again, take out as many as you can. Rey reached out with both hands this time. 3 TIE fighters crumpled like paper, crushed by invisible force. Another group veered off course, colliding with each other. A Star Destroyer's shields flickered as Rey simply pushed them off, leaving the ship vulnerable. The Resistance fighters that had secretly followed them, Strange hadn't even noticed them arrive, seized the opening. They poured fire into the exposed Star Destroyer, crippling it. All ships, concentrate fire on the Steadfast. That was a new voice, older, commanding, female. This is General Organa. Today we strike at the heart of the First Order. Strange felt a surge of hope through Rey. Her mentor had arrived with reinforcements. The odds were still terrible, but they'd gone from impossible to merely suicidal. The space battle raged around them as the Falcon dove toward the planet below, Exegol, shrouded in perpetual storms. Lightning arced between massive storm clouds. The surface was barely visible, but Strange could see structures down there. Ancient temples, and something else. something that made his mystical senses scream in warning. "The Sith Citadel," Ben said, pointing to a massive fortress carved into the planet's surface. "That's where Palpatine is, where the clone vessels are kept, and where the Final Order fleet is docked," Poe added, "underneath the surface, in massive hangars that span continents." Strange saw them now, thousands of triangular star destroyers emerging from underground facilities. Each one bristled with weapons, each one capable of destroying worlds. "We're too late," Finn said. "The fleet is launching." "Then we change the objective," Strange replied. "Rey, Ben, we go for Palpatine directly. Take him out and the fleet loses its commander. Poe, Finn, can you coordinate with the Resistance? Target those star destroyers before they reach orbit?" "Against thousands of ships," Poe laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Sure, why not? We've survived worse odds." "No, you haven't," Ben said flatly. "Well, there's a first time for everything." The Falcon plunged into Exegol's atmosphere, turbulence shaking the ship. Through the storm clouds, Strange saw the Citadel growing closer. It was massive, a structure that dwarfed anything he'd seen on Earth. Gothic architecture on a planetary scale, all sharp angles and ominous shadows. And at its heart, Strange felt him. Palpatine, waiting. "Landing in 30 seconds, Poe announced. "Hope everyone's made peace with their gods, because we're about to meet them." Strange looked at Rey and Ben, two young people both scarred by Palpatine's manipulations, both carrying impossible burdens, both refusing to give up. "For what it's worth," Strange said, "I'm honored to fight alongside you." Rey smiled. "May the Force be with you, Dr. Strange." "And with you." Strange's hands began to glow as the ship touched down. "Now, let's go kill an Emperor." The Sith Citadel's interior was a cathedral of darkness. Massive statues of ancient Sith lords lined the approach, beings whose names Strange didn't know but whose malevolence was palpable even in stone. The air itself felt thick with dark side energy, every breath an effort. Ben had been right. Fighting here was like fighting underwater. Rey moved beside Strange, her lightsaber ignited and providing the only source of clean light. Ben walked slightly ahead, his own blade ready. Behind them, the sounds of battle echoed. Resistance fighters engaging the Sith Eternal cultists who swarmed from side passages. "He's close," Rey said. "I can feel him." "Can you?" Strange nodded. His mystical senses painted a picture his eyes couldn't. A massive concentration of dark energy ahead, pulsing like a corrupt heart. Throne room, straight ahead. They emerged into a chamber so vast its ceiling was lost in shadow. At the far end, seated on a throne of black stone, was Emperor Palpatine. But this wasn't the projection they'd faced in the temple. This was physical, real, and horrifying. Palpatine's body was a patchwork of decay and regeneration, flesh that looked simultaneously young and ancient, held together by Sith sorcery and machinery. Tubes and wires connected him to devices Strange didn't recognize. His eyes glowed with yellow light. "Welcome," Palpatine said, his voice reverberating through the chamber. "The Jedi orphan, the failed apprentice, and the lost sorcerer. How poetic that you've all come to witness my triumph." "It's over, Palpatine," Rey said. "Your fleet will be destroyed. Your resurrection has failed. You're dying." "Dying?" Palpatine laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. "Child, I am beyond death. I have been every voice you have ever heard inside your head." His gaze shifted to Ben. "I have been every voice you have heard. I have manipulated every moment, orchestrated every tragedy. And now," he gestured broadly, "I will be reborn." Behind the throne, Strange saw them. Rows of cylinders containing clone bodies. Some were fully formed, others still growing. all of them bearing Palpatine's features in various stages of development. "The vessels," Strange said. "Rey, we need to destroy them, now." "Try." Palpatine raised one withered hand, and force lightning erupted from his fingers, not the focused bolts Strange had seen before, but a storm of energy that filled the entire chamber. Strange threw up shields, golden mandalas appearing between them and the lightning. The energy struck his defenses and was absorbed, channeled away through dimensional portals. But the sheer power was staggering. Strange felt his shields cracking, reforming, cracking again. Rey and Ben moved as one, flanking Palpatine from opposite sides. Their lightsabers became blurs of blue and red, cutting through the lightning. They'd fought each other enough to know each other's patterns, and now they used that knowledge in harmony. Where Rey struck high, Ben went low. When Ben feinted left, Rey came from the right. Palpatine simply sat on his throne and weathered their assault. His free hand gestured lazily, and both Rey and Ben were thrown backward by invisible force. They crashed into pillars hard enough to crack stone. "Pathetic," Palpatine said. "You fight like children playing at war. I have orchestrated the fall of republics. I have broken Jedi Masters. What chance do you have?" Strange used the distraction. While Palpatine was focused on Rey and Ben, Strange opened a portal directly beneath one of the clone cylinders. The vessel fell through, emerging from another portal high above. It dropped, shattering on the throne room floor. Palpatine's head snapped towards Strange, fury twisting his features. "You dare!" Strange opened 10 more portals. 10 more cylinders fell. The sound of breaking glass and spilling Bacta fluid echoed through the chamber. "I dare a great many things," Strange replied. He was drawing on everything now, the mystic arts, the ambient force energy, even a trickle of power from the dark dimension. It was dangerous, potentially corrupting, but necessary. "And I've faced dictators before. You all have the same weakness. And what is that?" Palpatine rose from his throne, lightning crackling around him. "You monologue too much." Strange clapped his hands together, and the images of Icon manifested, dozens of copies of himself appearing throughout the chamber. Each one began opening portals, destroying clone vessels. Palpatine screamed. The sound was beyond human, beyond anything natural. It was rage given voice, and it shattered several of Strange's duplicates. But not all of them. The cylinders continued to fall, each one a potential resurrection erased. Rey and Ben were back on their feet, moving to flank Palpatine again. But this time, the Emperor was ready. He gestured, and the floor itself buckled. Sith runes carved into the stone began to glow with crimson light. "You think you understand power?" Palpatine's voice had changed, becoming multiple voices speaking in unison, the voices of all the Sith Lords who'd come before him. "I am all the Sith. Their power flows through me. Their knowledge is mine. You cannot defeat what is eternal." Dark energy erupted from the runes, forming tendrils that lashed out at them. Strange recognized the technique. It was similar to the crimson bands of Cytorak, but twisted, corrupted. The tendrils wrapped around his duplicates, crushing them. Wrapped around Rey and Ben, lifting them off the ground. Strange felt one catch his leg. The pain was immediate and intense. Not just physical, but spiritual. The dark side was trying to corrupt him, to turn his own power against him. "You feel it, don't you?" Palpatine approached Strange slowly, savoring the moment. "The power of the dark side. It offers you everything: knowledge, strength, the ability to return home." He leaned closer. "Yes, I can send you back to your universe. I have that power now. The world between worlds is mine to command. Simply kneel, pledge yourself to me, and you'll see your Earth again." Strange looked up at the Emperor, at this creature that had orchestrated suffering across an entire galaxy. He thought of Wong, of the Sanctum, of everyone he'd left behind. The temptation was real. Then he thought of Rey and Ben, of Finn and Poe, of Leia Organa fighting in the skies above, of an entire galaxy that deserved better than this monster's rule. "I've been offered power before," Strange said, "by beings far more impressive than you, and I've learned something important. The cost is never worth it." He reached deep into the mystical reserves he'd been conserving, drew on the connection Rey had taught him to the living force, and pulled. The dark tendril shattered. Strange rose to his feet, eldritch energy swirling around him like a cloak of star. "You want to see real power?" Strange's voice echoed with otherworldly resonance. "Let me show you what a master of the mystic arts can do when he stops holding back." Strange's hands moved in patterns too complex to follow. The air itself seemed to tear, and through the tears, Strange pulled energy from dimensions Palpatine couldn't even perceive. The crimson cosmos, the flames of the Faltine, the winds of Watumb. He wove them together with the Force, creating something entirely new. A spell that existed in both systems simultaneously, that was neither magic nor force, but a fusion of both. Palpatine's eyes widened, perhaps the first genuine fear Strange had seen in them. "What are you?" "Ending this," Strange said. The spell detonated outward, a wave of energy that burned away the dark side corruption like sunlight through fog. The runes on the floor cracked and went dark. The tendrils holding Rey and Ben dissolved, and the remaining clone cylinders shattered all at once, their contents spilling onto the stone. Palpatine staggered, his connection to the dark side momentarily disrupted. Rey didn't waste the opening. She charged forward, her lightsaber finding its mark. The blade pierced Palpatine's chest, and he gasped. But he didn't fall. Instead, he laughed. Blood, black as oil, dripped from the wound, but he laughed. "Did you think it would be that easy?" Palpatine gripped Rey's lightsaber with his bare hands, lightning arcing between his fingers. "I have died before, girl. Death means nothing to me. As long as the dark side exists, I will return, again and again, forever." Ben's lightsaber joined Rey's, both blades burning through Palpatine's decaying form. Still he stood, still he fought. His power was immense, sustained by pure hatred and will. Strange saw the truth then. Palpatine couldn't be killed, not in any conventional sense. His consciousness was too deeply woven into the dark side itself. Even destroying his body wouldn't be enough. He'd simply wait in the world between worlds, biding his time until he could return. Unless Strange did something drastic. "Rey, Ben, get back," Strange commanded. "I'm going to seal him away, permanently." "How?" Rey asked, pulling her lightsaber free. "By using the one thing he can't defend against." Strange began the most dangerous spell he knew, one the Ancient One had warned him to never attempt except as a last resort. "I'm going to trap him outside of time entirely." The spell required absolute concentration. Strange had to weave together elements from a dozen mystical traditions, anchor them in the Force, and direct them all at a single point. If he failed, he'd trap himself along with Palpatine. Or worse, he'd fracture the timeline irreparably. But he'd faced longer odds before. Strange's hands moved, and golden chains materialized in the air, the crimson chains of Sitarak, amplified by Force energy. They wrapped around Palpatine, binding him. The Emperor struggled, calling on all his power, but the chains held. "What are you doing?" Palpatine demanded. "You can't." "I can," Strange said. "And I am. You wanted to master the world between worlds? Congratulations, you're about to become part of it. Forever." The spell reached its climax. Reality bent around Palpatine, folding in on itself. Strange was creating a pocket dimension, a prison outside normal space and time, anchored to nothing, accessible by no pathway. A place where even the Force couldn't reach. Palpatine screamed as he was pulled into it. His physical form began to dissolve, his consciousness fragmenting. "No, I am eternal. I am inevitable. I am..." Gone. The pocket dimension sealed with a sound like thunder. Palpatine's presence vanished from the galaxy, from the Force, from existence itself. Strange collapsed to his knees, utterly spent. Every mystical reserve was depleted. Every connection he'd forged to the Force was stretched to breaking. He'd pushed himself beyond his limits and paid the price. Rey and Ben rushed to his side. "Dr. Strange! Stephen!" "I'm okay," Strange managed. "Just need a moment." Above them, through the Citadel's broken roof, they could see the sky. The storm clouds were dispersing, and the Final Order fleet, those massive star destroyers, were falling from orbit, their systems failing without Palpatine's power to sustain them. "You did it," Ben said quietly. "You actually did it." "We did it," Strange corrected. "All of us, together." The throne room doors burst open. Finn and Poe rushed in, followed by Resistance fighters. "The fleet is falling," Poe shouted. "Every ship just dropping from the sky. What happened?" "Palpatine's gone," Rey said, her voice filled with wonder. "Truly gone, sealed outside reality itself." "Does that mean..." Finn looked around at the destruction. "Did we win?" Strange looked at the young man and smiled, despite his exhaustion. "Yes, I believe we did." 3 days later, Strange stood on the observation deck of the Resistance flagship, watching the fleet gather. Word had spread quickly. The Emperor was gone, the Final Order destroyed. Systems that had been too afraid to resist were now pledging support. The First Order, leaderless and demoralized, was collapsing. Rey found him there, standing with his hands clasped behind his back, the cloak of levitation draped over his shoulders. "The Council wants to thank you formally," Rey said, "General Organa especially. She says you've given the galaxy something it hasn't had in decades, hope." Strange smiled slightly. "Hope is what you all gave me. I was lost, trapped in an alien universe with no clear way home. You took me in, trusted me, fought beside me. You saved us," Rey said simply. "Without you, Palpatine would have returned. The Final Order would have crushed everything. Perhaps..." Strange turned to face her. "Or perhaps the Force would have found another way. Another champion. The galaxy seems remarkably good at producing heroes when it needs them." Rey moved to stand beside him, looking out at the assembled ships. "What will you do now? Stay? Help us rebuild?" "I want to," Strange admitted. "There's so much to learn here. The Force, this galaxy's history, the ways your civilization has developed. As a scholar, it's fascinating. But..." Rey heard the hesitation in his voice. "But I have responsibilities in my own universe," Strange said. "People depending on me, threats that only I can face. And the breach I created in the world between worlds, it's sealed now, but it's still there. Still a weak point. I need to repair it properly. From both sides. You think you can find a way home? I know I can." Strange's hands began to glow with golden light. "The spell I used to trap Palpatine. It taught me something about dimensional barriers, about how to navigate them without tearing holes in reality. It will take time, preparation, but I can create a stable portal back to my universe." Rey's expression fell slightly. "When?" "Not yet," Strange assured her. "First, I need to teach you everything I can. The hybrid techniques we developed, combining the Force and the mystic arts. They're too dangerous to leave unguided. You'll need to understand the theory, the limitations, the risks." You're going to train me, if you'll accept me as a teacher." Strange smiled. "Though I warn you, my methods are unconventional. The Ancient One once made me study for 6 hours straight without blinking. I promise to be gentler than that." Rey laughed. "I'll take that risk. Besides, someone needs to preserve this knowledge if another threat like Palpatine ever emerges. The galaxy will be ready," Strange finished. "That's the idea." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the ships. Finally, Rey spoke again. "Ben wants to speak with you before you leave. He's struggling with everything that's happened." Strange nodded. He'd expected as much. Ben Solo had spent years as Kylo Ren, Supreme Leader of the First Order. Redemption wasn't simple, and the galaxy wouldn't forgive easily. Where is he? In the meditation chamber. He's been there since the battle, trying to find peace. Strange found Ben sitting cross-legged in a small room, his lightsaber disassembled on the floor before him. The young man looked up as Strange entered. "Dr. Strange, I was hoping you'd come." "Rey said you wanted to talk." Ben gestured to the floor, and Strange sat across from him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ben said, "You offered me redemption, told me I could choose differently. I'm trying, but..." He looked at his hands. "I don't know if I deserve it. All the people I've killed, the suffering I've caused." "Redemption isn't about deserving," Strange said gently. "It's about choosing to be better than you were, about making different decisions going forward. How do you live with it? The guilt?" Strange thought of his own mistakes, the spell that had broken the multiverse, the lives lost because of his arrogance. "You don't forget, you carry it. Let it shape you into someone who won't make the same mistakes. And you find ways to atone, small acts every day that tip the scales back toward balance." Ben picked up a component of his lightsaber, the kyber crystal glowing faintly red. "My lightsaber is corrupted. The crystal was bled, forced to the dark side. Rey says crystals can be healed, turned back to the light, but I don't know if I have the right to try." Strange extended his hand. "May I?" Ben hesitated, then handed over the crystal. Strange examined it with mystical sight, seeing the corruption as dark veins running through the gem's structure. But underneath, he could sense the crystal's original nature, pure, luminous waiting. "In my universe, we believe that everything contains the potential for transformation," Strange said. "That nothing is irredeemable if you're willing to do the work." He channeled a small amount of force energy, light side energy, drawn from his connection with Rey, through the crystal. Slowly, the red faded. The crystal cleared, became translucent, then began to glow with a soft blue light. "How?" Ben stared at it. "I didn't do it. You did." Strange handed the crystal back. "Your intention, your desire to change, that's what healed it. I just provided a catalyst." Ben held the crystal, watching it pulse with light. Tears streaked down his face. "Thank you," he whispered. "Don't thank me. Thank the people you'll help in the future. Thank the lives you'll save. That's where your redemption lies." Strange left Ben to rebuild his lightsaber and made his way to the ship's command center. General Leia Organa was there, directing fleet movements with the practiced ease of someone who'd been fighting her entire life. "Dr. Strange," she acknowledged. "Rey tells me you're planning to return home." "Eventually, yes, but not immediately." Leia studied him with eyes that had seen too much loss, carried too much weight. "Thank you for saving my son, for giving him a chance I thought he'd never have." "He saved himself," Strange replied. "I just opened a door. He chose to walk through it." Still, Leia's expression softened slightly. "The galaxy owes you a debt we can never repay. If you ever need anything from any corner of this galaxy, you'll have it." "I'll remember that." Strange looked at the tactical displays, showing the Resistance's growing strength. "What comes next for you?" "Rebuilding," Leia said. "The Republic fell, but its ideals survived. We'll establish a new government, one that learns from past mistakes. It won't be easy, and there will be resistance from the First Order remnants. But we'll endure. We always do." Strange nodded. He'd seen this pattern before, the eternal cycle of destruction and renewal. "If I might offer advice, don't forget the lessons you've learned. Power concentrated in too few hands led to Palpatine's rise. Distribute it. Create checks and balances, and never stop questioning your own certainty." Spoken like someone who's seen civilizations rise and fall. "More than I'd care to count," Strange admitted. Over the next weeks, Strange divided his time between teaching Rey and preparing for his eventual departure. The hybrid techniques they'd developed required careful documentation. He created a grimoire of sorts, combining Jedi texts with mystical theory. It would serve as a foundation for future Force users who wanted to explore the boundaries of their abilities. He also worked on repairing the world between worlds. It required multiple trips to the Lothal Temple, carefully reinforcing the membrane between times, sealing the weak points his arrival had created. The work was delicate, exhausting, and absolutely necessary. He couldn't leave this galaxy with a temporal vulnerability that another Palpatine might exploit. During one such trip, Rey accompanied him. They stood in the chamber where the world between worlds manifested, watching the doorways that showed infinite moments. "It's beautiful," Rey said softly, "and terrifying." "Most truly powerful things are," Strange replied. He was weaving the final repairs. Golden light interacting with Force energy to create a seamless seal. "There. That should hold for millennia at least." Rey looked at him. "You're almost ready to leave, aren't you?" Strange nodded. "The portal I'm creating, it's nearly complete. Another few days and it will be stable enough to traverse." "Will we ever see you again?" "Perhaps," Strange smiled. "The multiverse is vast and sometimes paths cross in unexpected ways, and now that I know your universe exists, I can find it again if necessary. Think of it as having a sorcerer on speed dial." Rey laughed, but there were tears in her eyes. "I'll miss you. I've learned so much, and there's still so much more." "You have everything you need," Strange assured her. "Trust in the Force, trust in your training, and trust in yourself. You're going to do remarkable things, Rey. I've seen enough to know that." The day came when Strange's portal was ready. The Resistance had assembled to see him off. Rey, Ben, Finn, Poe, Leia, and dozens of others whose lives he'd touched. They gathered in the Millennium Falcon's hangar bay, where Strange had inscribed mystical runes in a perfect circle. "This is it," Strange said, standing at the circle's center. "The portal will only be stable for a few minutes. If I'm going to go, it has to be now." "Before you do," Rey stepped forward, holding something. Ben's healed kyber crystal, mounted in a simple setting. "We wanted you to have this, to remember us by." Strange took the crystal, feeling its warmth. "I'll treasure it, and I'll remember all of you. This galaxy far, far away that took in a lost sorcerer and made him part of something greater." He raised his hands big, and the runes began to glow. A portal opened, not the typical circular gateway of a sling ring, but a massive tear in reality itself. Through it, Strange could see the Sanctum Sanctorum, could see Wong's startled face as he noticed the portal opening. "May the Force be with you," Rey said. "And with you," Strange replied. "All of you. Always." He stepped through the portal. The last thing he saw before it closed was Rey, Ben, and the others standing together. A new generation of heroes ready to face whatever challenges came next. The portal sealed behind him with a sound like distant thunder. Wong stared at him. "Stephen, you've been gone for 6 weeks. Where?" "Wong," Strange interrupted. "Sit down. I have the most incredible story to tell you." Strange moved deeper into the sanctum, the familiar scent of incense and old books washing over him. 6 weeks. It had felt like months in that other galaxy, but here only 6 weeks had passed. Time flowed strangely between universes. Wong followed him to the library where Strange collapsed into his favorite chair. The cloak of levitation settled around him protectively, as if relieved to be home. "I fell through a dimensional rift," Strange began, "but not into another dimension of our multiverse, into another universe entirely, one governed by an energy field called the Force, rather than mystical dimensions. A galaxy far, far away from anything we know." Wong's expression shifted from concern to fascination. "Another universe? Stephen, that's theoretically possible. But the barriers between separate multiverses are supposed to be impenetrable." "Supposed to be," Strange agreed. He pulled out the kyber crystal Rey had given him. It pulsed with gentle blue light, responding to his touch. "This is from there, a Force-attuned crystal. It resonates with living energy in ways our mystical artifacts don't." He spent the next hour recounting everything: his crash landing on Achto, meeting Rey and the Resistance, the confrontation with Kylo Ren, discovering the world between worlds, facing Emperor Palpatine, and the final battle on Exegol. Wong listened without interrupting, his expression growing more amazed with each detail. "You merged the mystic arts with this Force energy," Wong said when Strange finished. "Created hybrid spells. That's unprecedented. The implications are staggering." "I know." Strange set the kyber crystal on the table between them. Two completely different systems of reality manipulation, compatible with each other. It suggests something fundamental about the nature of power itself. That maybe all these different systems, magic, the Force, even the Infinity Stones, are just different expressions of the same underlying truth. "And you taught this to the girl, Rey?" "As much as I could." Strange stood, moving to the window that overlooked Bleecker Street. New York looked exactly as he'd left it, chaotic, vibrant, home. "She'll carry that knowledge forward. Perhaps one day, if our universes ever connect again, we'll see what she's done with it." Wong was quiet for a moment. Then, "You could have stayed, explored this new universe for years, decades. But you came back." "I had to." Strange turned to face his friend. "This is where I belong, where I'm needed. That galaxy has its heroes. Ours needs me here." "Speaking of which," Wong's expression turned serious. "While you were gone, we had 3-dimensional incursions, a demon prince trying to manifest in Cleveland, and the Scarlet Witch stopped by asking if you knew anything about chaos magic origins. I told her you were on sabbatical." Strange groaned. "Of course you did. What did you tell the demon prince?" "That he had 30 seconds to return to his dimension before I sealed him in a pain loop for eternity. He left in 25. "Good man." Strange allowed himself a smile. Then his expression sobered. "Wong, there's something else. The spell I used to trap Palpatine, it was a variant of the Montesi formula. I created a pocket dimension outside of time itself." Wong's eyes widened. "Stephen, that spell is forbidden. The Ancient One specifically warned." "I know what she warned, but it was necessary. Palpatine couldn't be killed by conventional means. His consciousness would have persisted in the Force, waiting for another chance to return." Strange met Wong's gaze steadily. I made the choice I had to make. And yes, I'll face the consequences if the Vishanti take issue with it. They already have. A new voice spoke from the shadows. Strange spun, hands rising defensively. A figure materialized, not quite solid, more a presence than a person. The avatar of the Vishanti, manifesting through multiple forms simultaneously. Agamotto's eye, Oshtur's wisdom, Hoggoth's strength. You have violated ancient laws. Stephen Strange, the Vishanti intoned. Created a prison beyond death itself. Trapped a soul where even we cannot reach it. I saved an entire galaxy, Strange replied, keeping his voice level. Emperor Palpatine had the power to unravel timelines, to corrupt the Force itself. If I hadn't stopped him, we are aware. The Vishanti's presence filled the room. We have observed your journey through the other universe, watched you merge mystical traditions never meant to combine, seen you teach forbidden knowledge to an outsider. Strange braced himself for judgment. He'd known this was coming, had accepted it the moment he'd cast that final spell. And we are impressed. Strange blinked. I'm sorry, what? You adapted, the Vishanti continued, learned, found common ground between seemingly incompatible systems. And when faced with an impossible choice, you made the difficult decision rather than the easy one. This is why we chose you as Sorcerer Supreme. Wong made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. However, the Vishanti's tone hardened. There must be balance. You opened a doorway between multiverses. That doorway is now closed, but the knowledge of its existence remains. Others will seek it, attempt to replicate your journey. I'll guard against that, Strange promised. You will do more than guard. The Vishanti's avatar shifted, becoming more defined. You will become the Watcher between worlds. Should threats emerge that span multiple multiverses, you will be called upon to face them. This is your burden now, Stephen Strange, the price of your expanded knowledge. Strange considered this, another responsibility. Another weight to carry. But then, when had he ever shied away from responsibility? I accept, he said. The Vishanti's presence began to fade. The Kyber crystal you brought back, it will serve as an anchor, a way to sense disturbances across multiversal barriers. Keep it close. And Stephen, the voice was almost gentle now. You did well. That galaxy is safer because of you. Do not forget that when the doubts come. Then they were gone. Strange and Wong stood in silence for a long moment. Finally, Wong said, Watcher between worlds, that's quite a promotion. Or quite a curse, Strange replied, but he picked up the Kyber crystal, felt it pulse warmly in his hand. Through it, he could sense that distant galaxy, could feel Rey's presence faintly, like an echo across infinite distance. She was training, teaching others what he'd taught her, building something new. Come on, Wong said, heading for the door. You've been gone 6 weeks. The least you can do is help me with the dimensional incursions backlog. Cleveland still has residual demon energy that needs cleansing. Cleveland, Strange sighed. Why is it always Cleveland? Because reality has a sense of humor. As they prepared to leave, Strange cast one last glance at the Kyber crystal, now resting on a pedestal in the library. It glowed softly, a piece of another universe preserved in his own, a reminder that the multiverse was vaster than anyone imagined, and that heroes existed in every corner of it. Somewhere in a galaxy far, far away, Rey was teaching students the hybrid techniques. Ben Solo was atoning for his past, one good deed at a time. Finn and Poe were helping rebuild a shattered republic. Leia Organa was forging a new government from the ashes of the old. And here in the Sanctum Sanctorum on Bleecker Street, Dr. Stephen Strange, master of the mystic arts, Sorcerer Supreme, and now Watcher between worlds, was preparing to deal with the demon prince in Cleveland. Some things, it seemed, were universal constants. Strange paused at the doorway, looking back one more time. "Wong, do you think we'll see them again? Ray and the others?" Wong considered this. "The multiverse is infinite, Stephen. Paths cross in unexpected ways. If you're meant to return there, you will. But for now," he gestured to the swirling portal he'd opened to Cleveland, "we have our own galaxy to protect." "Fair enough." Strange stepped through the portal, the cloak billowing behind him. "Though I have to say, after facing an immortal Sith Lord and preventing a temporal catastrophe, a demon prince seems almost manageable." "Don't get cocky," Wong warned. "This one has 3 heads and breathes antimatter." "Of course it does." They emerged in Cleveland, where reality was indeed looking somewhat worse for wear. Strange raised his hands, golden light beginning to glow around his fingers. The familiar comfort of the mystic arts, the satisfying complexity of a problem to solve. But in a quiet corner of his mind, he carried that other galaxy with him. Carried the knowledge that somewhere out there in a universe he could no longer reach easily, friends-wise fought their own battles. And should they ever truly need him, should a threat emerge that spanned both their worlds, he would find a way back. The Force and the mystic arts had proven compatible once. They could be again. Strange smiled as he began weaving the cleansing spell. "You know, Wong, I should probably write all this down, create a record of what I learned there. The hybrid techniques, the nature of the Force, the world between worlds." "A book?" Wong asked, containing a demon's manifestation with practiced ease. "More like a manual, just in case we ever need to make contact with that universe again. Or in case someone from there finds their way here." Always planning ahead. Someone has to. Strange completed his spell, and Cleveland's dimensional fabric began to repair itself. Besides, who knows? Maybe one day a young Jedi will fall through a rift and land in New York. It would be nice if we had a welcome package ready. Wong actually smiled at that. A Jedi in New York. Now that would be interesting. Wouldn't it just? As they worked to restore Cleveland to its normal state, or what passed for normal in a world where magic was real and sorcerers protected reality itself, Strange felt the Kyber crystal's presence even from a distance. A connection maintained across impossible gulfs of space and dimension. The galaxy far, far away was safe. For now. And Dr. Stephen Strange, Sorcerer Supreme, Watcher between worlds, was exactly where he needed to be. Home. The Sorcerer Supreme stood in the Sanctum's highest tower 3 months later, gazing out at the New York skyline. In his hand, the Kyber crystal pulsed with gentle blue light, stronger than before. Something was happening in that distant galaxy. He could feel it through the Force connection Rey had taught him to maintain. She was training a new generation of Force wielders. Not Jedi exactly. Something new. Something that incorporated the lessons Strange had taught her, blending ancient wisdom with innovative technique. The galaxy was healing, rebuilding, and remembering what it meant to have hope. Ben Solo had taken a new name, not Kylo Ren, but not quite Ben anymore either. He called himself Ren, reclaiming the title but transforming its meaning. Where the Knights of Ren had brought darkness, he would bring light. One life saved at a time, one wrong righted. The path of redemption was long, but he walked it willingly. The Resistance had become the new Republic, and General Leia Organa, now Chancellor Organa, guided it with wisdom earned through decades of struggle. The First Order was scattered, broken. hunted not by armies but by the very ideals they'd tried to destroy. And Emperor Palpatine remained sealed in his eternal prison, trapped outside time itself. Strange checked the spell regularly, ensuring the bindings held. They would. He'd made certain of that. Through the Kyber crystal, Strange felt Rey's presence touch his mind across the infinite distance. A message, wordless but clear. Thank you for everything. May the Force be with you always. Strange smiled and sent back his own message, channeling it through the crystal with mystical precision. And with you, until we meet again. The connection faded, but the warmth remained. Two universes forever changed by their collision. Two systems of power, proven compatible. Two sets of heroes, bound by mutual respect and shared purpose. Wong entered the tower, carrying tea. Still communing with your distant friends? Just checking in, Strange replied, pocketing the crystal. They're doing well. Better than well, actually. Good, Wong handed him a cup. Because I've been analyzing the dimensional readings from your portal. Stephen, the energy signature you left behind. It's detectable, traceable. Strange understood immediately. Someone from there could follow it, could find their way here. Or someone from another universe entirely might stumble across it and use it as a roadmap. The door you opened? You closed it, but you left a path, a trail. Strange sipped his tea, considering this. It should have concerned him. The potential for interdimensional chaos, for invasions from unknown realities, for complications beyond measure. Instead, he found himself hopeful. Then let them come, Strange said quietly. Let the universes meet. Let knowledge be shared, friendships forged, alliances built. The multiverse doesn't have to be a collection of isolated bubbles. Maybe it's meant to be something more, something connected. That's either profound wisdom or spectacular hubris, Wong observed. With me, it's usually both. Strange set down his cup and looked out at the city once more. But I learned something in that other galaxy, Wong. I learned that the greatest strength doesn't come from isolation or from hoarding power. It comes from connection, from people, or beings, or consciousnesses choosing to stand together against the darkness. Very philosophical. I had good teachers. Strange thought of Rey, of the Ancient One, of every mentor who'd shaped his journey. The galaxy far away taught me that there's always hope. Even in the darkest times, even when evil seems insurmountable, there are always heroes willing to stand against it. And sometimes those heroes come from the most unexpected places. Wong raised his teacup in a small salute. Two unexpected heroes, then. Two unexpected heroes, Strange agreed, and to the adventures still waiting for us in this universe and others. The Kyber crystal pulsed one final time, as if in agreement. Somewhere across the infinite expanse of reality, a young woman with growing power smiled. Somewhere a redeemed warrior found peace. Somewhere a galaxy healed. And in the Sanctum Sanctorum, on a street called Bleecker, in a city called New York, a sorcerer stood watch, ready for whatever came next, ready to defend his universe, or to journey to another if needed. Ready to be the bridge between worlds. Dr. Stephen Strange had opened the world between worlds and survived. He'd merged the Force with the mystic arts and created something new. He'd saved a galaxy that wasn't his own and made friends he'd never forget. The story could have ended there. Perhaps it should have. But stories, like the multiverse itself, never truly end. They simply transform, evolve, continue in ways no one expects. And this story of a sorcerer and a scavenger, of magic and the Force, of two universes touching, this story had only just begun. May the Force be with you. More stories await.